Okay, let's the Cavell reading's kind of hard. You guys notice that? Yeah, I mean that's like real philosophy. Sorry about that. But well, his well, we read him. What did we read him on? Othello. That wasn't that hard. This was harder, huh? Well, fortunately, you all have your Cartesian meditations, and I'm sure you've all read Kant's Critique of Pure Reason in the last 6 months, because, I mean, of course, right? Yeah, I mean, I can just tell. You just have an air of Kantianness about you. Exactly. So do we have any questions? I'm worried about this quiz. I'm going to be honest with you. Yeah.
Does whispering count? Number 16. That's what I thought. No.
I don't know. I wrote that honestly because I didn't know the answer. Do you have it?
It basically just said like no one can know. There's like no way to tell. Does that mean it's like subjected to different people or like?
Yeah. What does it mean?
In the context of what he was talking about with regards to the story, it seemed like Leontes took it to mean something so meaningful that yes, it would have to count because of the way he reacted to it.
Yeah.
But he didn't really say.
Hopefully we'll look at that passage because that's another one of those bizarre Leontian passages. Yeah.
Number 10. Why do we always tell less and more than we know?
Yeah. Again, I was trying to. I wanted to read it, but I didn't want to read it that closely. So I just wrote the question down. I was hoping that somebody would answer it. Yeah.
I thought it was because we have a wish for everything and nothing at the same time. I don't know.
That sounds deep. I like that. I'm going with that. Because like we want like everything. Because everything. That's another thing, right? Everything is so nothing is actually everything, because it's plenitude. Because I don't know. Let's answer your question. Yeah.
Question.
Mhm.
22. What chain of equations is taking jealousy as derivative of the sense of revenge? Right, solve.
Yeah, that one.
That's awesome. What chain of equations does taking jealousy as derivative of the sense of revenge upon life solve?
One where fathers and sons are lovers and wives and mothers are interchangeable. Something like that.
Yeah. So I've got the taking the jealousy as derivative of the sense of revenge upon life, upon its issuing. So issuing is primarily in this sense. Issuing is what?
Siring.
Yeah, birding, yeah. Or separating. And then separating is important because nothing is actually everything but not separated, right? Plenitude. Right? Okay. And or replication. I am taking it as, so to speak, that so to speak there is important, the solution of a problem in computation or economy, one that at a stroke solves the chain of equations in which sons and brothers are lovers, and lovers are fathers and sons, and wives and mothers become one another.
So what's the short answer?
Okay, all right.
The short answer.
So we've got so jealousy is derivative of the sense of revenge upon life. All right, so there's a sense of revenge upon life because you're mad at life or something, and jealousy is derivative of that general just F the world attitude. Okay, I get it. All right, upon its issuing, what's the it's? The jealousy? Yeah. Okay, or separating, or replication.
What does that solve?
You see what you put us through?
It's fun.
For you.
What was the question again? Well, the question just asks what chain of equations does it solve? And the chain of equations is just the one that, as you pointed out, right? Yeah, it's just it's a simple thing. It's the chain of equations in which sons and brothers are lovers, and lovers are fathers and sons, and wives and mothers become one another. Ooh, that's very musical. So that would be the answer.
So sons and brothers are lovers and fathers and sons are what?
Sons and brothers are lovers. That's hot. Lovers are fathers and sons. So, hold on.
Lovers are fathers and
Oh no. I'll have no markers. Are there some back there? Oh, cursed.
can't be.
All right. Let's go have ice cream instead. Okay, actually, you know what? I think I've got one in the bag.
Ice cream?
Well, that goes without saying. Like I would come to class without ice cream. I'm no fool. I'm not a doctor.
I have one if you need one.
I got it. All right, so we've got sons, brothers equals lovers. I don't think equation is the right word for this. Lovers are father's sons. And an and, so that would be plus, right? Wives, mothers. So that would be the equation. So if it's on the quiz, that's the answer I'm looking for. Yeah. This actually isn't as complicated as it looks.
Why does Hermione say she preserved herself?
Where is that?
19.
Why does Hermione say she preserved herself? All right, for what reason she speaks? Is her first words to Leontes saying, "I saved my chaste flower for you"?
Did she talk to Perdita?
Yeah, it's Perdita, and the reason she gives for preserving herself. This is actually dwelt on in some detail. Anyone? Anyone? Ooh. She wanted to see her issue, her child. That's why she preserved herself. That was the easy question too.
It was built upon such detail.
So the answer was she wanted to see her.
Yeah, she wanted to see her kid. That's why she preserved herself. How did she know? You ever get the sense that maybe Paulina engineered this whole thing? Possibly Camillo?
She's like, Iago's something.
Yeah. Well, because Paulina, so when she got rid of her husband, she was able to torture the king for 16 years. That'd be fun. I would take that job. Just imagine, like, it's like your job is like whoever's president, you just torture them. Be great. Yeah.
Number 13, what is the matter for story and what is the matter for drama?
Okay, that's a good one. Anyone have an answer for that?
So the matter for drama was that you had a wife that you thought was lost, but really wasn't. And the matter of story was the story of a daughter who was found lost. Lost and found, sorry.
Yeah. Let me see if there's anything else I need out of that.
I thought they had to be empirically lost, whatever that means.
Okay, yeah, so I think that's kind of, he says, this is confined as a matter of this drama's competition with narrative romance. By making the finding of a child who has been empirically lost, in fact is italicized, rejected and abandoned, a matter swiftly dealt with by simple narration. So we're dealing with an empirically lost and in fact rejected and abandoned matter is for narration. So in fact, empirically. The matter for drama, by contrast, is to investigate the finding of a wife not in fact empirically lost, but let me say transcendentally lost. We're actually going to learn about that today. Lost just because one is blind to her, as if it were conceptually unprepared for her because that one is blind to himself, lost to himself. That's so clear. Okay, so I think the mythical gist here is that that narrative can deal with empirical facts and like objective reality. All right, so this is good. You guys know the difference between objective and subjective, right? So narrative deals with objective and so objectively lost is the matter for narrative, and subjectively lost is the matter for drama. So just not really lost, but as if. So like yeah, okay. See, I'll write Professor Cavell and tell him to clear this crap up. It's an easy thing to do. Yeah.
7, what modes of narrative are Shakespeare putting into active competition?
Dovetailing excellently with the question we just, yes, sir.
I was going to say the competition of poetic theater with non-theatrical romance.
Yeah, so what we just talked about, romance versus drama. Yeah.
Polyphony cipher is an example of what breeding?
Nothing?
One thing.
Yeah.
Out of control?
Yeah, nothing breeding out of control. I like that. Yes, sir.
How can Hermione be understood as Leontes' issue?
Yeah, that's weird.
Well, I said something like, essentially, she's resurrected at the end, and she's only able to be resurrected because of his bullshit that caused her to be lost in the first place.
All right. Okay, that works. Yeah.
And the issue is like a daughter, and like I have issues with her. So when she's come to life because of him, she's like this.
Okay, but how does, all right, so there's that, and then the Cavell says, and this ties into the thing that I said about how nothing is actually everything undifferentiated. So kind of one of the key features of Cavell's argument is he says that nothing is actually everything from Leontes' perspective, because when he's saying blah 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 is nothing, he's really saying that it's all in me. There's no separation between me and the world. You know, I'm controlling everything with my mind. So it's one of the 7 laws of magical thinking is not seeing a boundary between your mind and reality. So when he's having his crisis, he doesn't recognize that there's an external reality, that, you know, the tree's falling in the forest. If he's not seeing it, that's not true for him. But when Hermione comes alive, he recognizes that the plenitude, the nothing, is split, and then it says right here, let us emphasize that this ceremony of union takes the form of a ceremony of separation, thus declaring that the question of two becoming one is just half the problem. The other half is how one becomes two. So the plenitude of Leontes' psychosis splits off, and one becomes two, and that's what the marriage ceremony does. And so she becomes separate from him, and in effect gains her own reality. In effect, is getting birthed, and then she is therefore Leontes' issue. You guys should have all got stoned for this class. Whoa, man. Dude, like, everything is nothing, man.
What institution does he seem to be against? It's either religion or marriage.
What's marriage?
Yeah.
I saw the word marriage in there somewhere, so I could.
Let's see. Well, marriage is, but drama is replacing a major institution. So do you think the drama is replacing marriage? I mean, it's lampooning marriage.
It's the religion.
Yeah, that's what Cavell says. I myself don't buy it for a minute, but that's what Cavell says.
Well, it's just another kind of step in the direction.
Yeah. What is the main difference for Cavell between Leontes and Descartes' interrogation of reality by doubts?
Isn't Descartes the skeptic and Leontes like has to know what he knows?
Yeah, but they're both they both hold on to doubts, and then and
Isn't like Leontes like a madman and the other guy found reason?
yeah, Descartes doesn't quite go mad.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's good. Everybody get that?
Descartes doesn't go mad.
All right, so Descartes goes on the verge of madness because of his doubts, but pulls it back because he reaches outside of the system and grounds it on God. But Leontes doesn't do that, so he goes mad. So Descartes, not mad for most people. Some people think he's mad. Leontes, mad. Everybody remember that. Remember that. It might be on a quiz.
How is wanting nothing the same as wanting no separation?
Excellent question. Okay, so this is from the, it's on 207 if anyone has their text. I said that Leontes loses the ability to count, to tell, to recount his experiences, and now I am taking that at his point, his strategy, to turn this punishment into his victory. Before he is recovered, he wants not to count, not to own. What is happening to him as his wants for there to be no counting, which is to say nothing. Why? This takes us to that other region of parting of that departure, separating, dividing, branching, grafting, flowering, shearing, issuing, delivering, breeding. Without partings in this region, there is nothing. If nothing comes from nothing, and if something comes only from the seeds of this earth, Leontes is quite logical in wanting there to be nothing, to want there to be no separation.
So the answer is
So nothing is a stable static state, and that something, begetting something, speaks of development and growth. So in something you have, by necessity, a separation that comes from development.
Yeah.
all right.
Why, doesn't help.
Can't you just say you need separation to start having something?
Yes. Because otherwise, if nothing's separated, what's the difference between something and nothing? And there's no difference, right? Because if you had something and nothing, then you have separation, and therefore you have something, and you can't say everything's nothing. Yes. See, this actually isn't. This is. Sometimes one suspects that the whole business of philosophy is taking very easy, intuitive things and making them very complicated. And I say that as someone who loves philosophy. Yeah.
What besides succession is recognizing/legitimizing one's child essential to? Question 14.
Yeah.
Individual sanity.
Yes.
Individual sanity.
Number
Number 14.
So what's the difference between a regular Oedipal situation, the tragic, and the Oedipal situation in romance?
The father wants to replace the son, and then in the romance, the son wants to replace the father.
Backwards.
Wait, what is it?
So in tragedy, there's a father and a son. So the tragic Oedipal, which is the Oedipal triangle we all learned, is who wants to replace who between the father and the son?
The son wants to replace his father.
And then, so in the romance Oedipal, right.
I don't get how that's romantic.
Well, I mean, it's well as in romance, as in the genre of romance. So we're not talking like the romantic movement or romantic poets or romantic love, just prose romances. Yeah.
How does speaking relate to counting?
And I say what counts.
He gets to say what counts. You can't recount what happened. You can't recount his past. You recount just to like remember and say, but recount is also to like count again.
I love how we're all devolving into philosophical babble. No, really, it's great. And I'm really happy right now. I felt completely the opposite as I did when we were talking about cuckold porn. So to speak is to say what counts on 205. That would work too. So you'll get extra points for putting in, like, just when you're writing, if you put in so to speak or whatever, like.
Just like word play.
Yeah. Anything else?
I don't think I'm going to remember any of this.
Well, you may or may not. The good news is if we bomb this quiz, I won't put many of the questions on the final. All right, let's pass them up. So that was purposefully designed so you wouldn't be nostalgic and miss the quizzes. But my little brother's argument against the humane treatment of farm animals, that, like if you're a cow and you're eating organic grain and you get the free range and everything, and then they come and kill you as a tragedy. but if your life's all miserable and then they come and kill you, it's sweet, sweet release. So it's actually unethical to treat animals that you're going to kill. Well,
I don't know if it's ethical, but I can see his point.
yeah, he's not as clever as he thinks he is. What's that? Yeah. No, the bear thing. Did anyone get an answer to the bear question?
He absorbing the guilt of society.
The ability for the bear was lawful.
I haven't heard it right yet. Yeah.
I just said in general that bear is an agent of nature and that humans are subject to nature, which was kind of what he was
Interesting.
trying to say. And
Yeah.
I think it came out what he said.
Yeah. Yeah, I believe he said that the difference between humans and the bear was that the bear only ate when he was hungry, and humans have insatiable hungers that we'll still eat when we're hungry. Yeah.
I said that a little bit broader, that the bear responded to instinctual motives, and the human might have some more sinister, calculated.
Instinctual motives. More calculative. Yeah. I don't know. It doesn't sound like anybody, or one person got it right, so I might be generous on it. You never know. Probably not. I'll probably be ungenerous. I'm just kidding.
What would you have wanted?
I want that the satiability that bears stop eating when they're full. Okay, so let's try and by the end of class today finish last Monday's lecture. Okay, so where we were was I'm getting more and more absent-minded by the day. I think it's like 12 or something, page 12 or something. Okay, yeah, page 10. Not quite. I was getting ahead of myself. Still in Act 1, Scene 2, where we're all going to die. So to get us up to speed, we're looking at this passage from I guess 128 to 146, page 10 and 11. And where we were at was we were looking at we're having Leontes sort of intellectually walking us through his break with reality. So he starts off with getting lost in a cow metaphor, and then so he says, you don't resemble a full-grown cow, therefore I can't be sure that you're my son. And then it's like, well, but they say that we resemble each other. So then he moves his relationship with knowledge to external validation. But what was the problem with they?
Women will say anything.
Yeah, women will say anything, and they were as false as or-dyed blacks, which we corrected Signet and decided that it wasn't that they were dyed too many times, but that they were dyed over to conceal. And then wind and waters were false because they're contingent and unpredictable, as in bless you. And then false as dice are to be wished by one that fixes them, and that makes true and false a completely subjective thing, because false, what he's defining as false is only false to him. It would be true to the person that he's playing dice against. Okay. So and then we were also talking about how it begins as a question, but ends up. So the question is, were they as false as X, Y, Z? Ends up as now this isn't to Blake's offhand comment about it is actually the big conclusion that we're drawing to. We're not quite there yet. So there's an implied pseudo-proverb: as women are as deceitful as flawed clothes dyed black, as unreliable as the winds and waters, and as unchaste as the guy who wants to commit adultery with them wants them to be. Yeah. Okay. You know, worldwide, it says that in here. Oh, never mind. I'm just a veritable cornucopia of useless trivia. And then the philosophical pseudo-axiom, were it true to say this boy were like me is dependent on the were they false. The truth of resemblance is based on their falseness, and their falseness being false negates the truth of the resemblance they claim. I'm sounding like Cavell. So, I could unpack that. Is it clear enough? Okay, so no, it's not worth it. I won't put it on the test. Yeah, here we go. Basically just, you can't determine a woman's honesty by women's testimony. Good job. Sometimes I anticipate myself surprisingly well. Uh-oh. Now things get complicated. Okay. Anyone want to read it? Yeah, it's on there. Yeah, 10. Middle of 135? Yeah.
On me with your welcome eye, sweet villain. Sweet villain, most dearest my call, and I damn me be affection. Thy intention stab the center, thou dost make possible things not so held. Communicates with dreams, how can this be? But what's unreal thou coactive art, and fellowless nothing. Then 'tis very credent thou mayest co-join with something, and thou dost, and that beyond commission, and I find it, and that the infection of my brains, and hardening of my brains.
Thank you. Now, in comparing, as I note at the bottom, you'll notice that the signet just slaughters the punctuation that was in the folio. This is the way that the god of the folio intended. And there's one part in particular we'll see that it's caused years and years and years of misinterpretation of this passage. Okay. So we'll break it down. First part, come, Sir Page, look on me with your welcome eye, sweet villain, most dearest my collop, can thy damn, may it be affection. So who's he talking to here? Besides himself, who he's really talking to? Yeah, his son. Sir Page, welcome eye. So I just, come my boy, look me in the eye. Can your mom, may it be affection. So this is the, it's like the Larry David from Curb Your Enthusiasm. Because supposedly you can't look someone in the eye when you're lying. I myself can lie like there's no tomorrow and look somebody in the eye. In fact, it's easier for me to lie and look someone in the eye than tell the truth. Does anyone else have this experience? Because you've got to be more firm with a lie. You got to stick to it. Just like my mama taught me. It doesn't matter how stupid your lie is, boy, stick with it to the end. So here we have this affection problem again. So what does affection mean here? There's a loaded question. So it could mean lovey, warm fuzziness. OED 2A. False pretenses as an affectation. Disease or abnormality. Something that affects something else. Emotional product of external influence. Emotion, passion versus reason. Product of imagination as a mental state.
The note says passion.
Yeah, but so maybe we have a Signet votes for passion. Let's see what I do with it. Nothing. Great. Sometimes I let myself down. So lovey, warm fuzziness. So can thy damn, may it be affection. So can your mom look me in the eye, may it be affection? Yeah, it could be. Because he's asking a question. May it be? Does she have affection for me? Sure. False pretenses. May it be affectation? Because she looks me in the eye. Doing the Daniel look in the eye. Mom, I promise I did not eat those cookies. It was sure the only one in the house. All I can tell you is I didn't eat them. All right, I'm going with the first two. Disease or abnormality. Yeah, that works too. I mean, could I be losing my mind? Do I have a mental disease? Something that affects something else? Well, obviously, because there's a broad definition for you. Emotional product of external influence. What's not? Emotion, passion versus reason. Contrary to the Signet, I think that that's the only one that I think is completely wrong.
Which one?
The one that the signet says.
Product
Product of imagination. Yeah, but I mean, again, all right. So this is what signet gives us, right? And this is the basis of most readings of the passage. Affection. Thy intention stabs the center. Thou doest make possible things not so held. Communicatest with dreams. How can this be? With what's unreal, thou coactive art, and fellowest nothing. So that's perfectly clear, right? So who's the... sorry. So it's a kind of a ode to affection as a rational passion, a la the signet. This makes the thy refer to the affection, which is fine if you punctuate it like signet does. So it's just it's talking to affection, right? So it's a affection. You stab at the center. So stabbing at the center would be. Think Yeats. The center cannot hold the stability of the world. It holds everything together. The unity of perceived reality. Thou makest possible things not so held. What does that mean?
Things thought impossible. Things thought impossible.
Yeah. Communicatest with dreams. Communicates with dreams. Talks through. Okay. Oh, affection. You disrupt the ground of reality and make us believe stuff that isn't real. See signet footnote. Yep, that's what it says. Except for mine's a little bit clearer. Okay, that's pretty clear, right? Everyone get that? All right. As with most great ideas, the only problem with this one is that it's wrong. Affection is the last word of the question about Hermione, as we saw. So, and then so you know the standard, and this actually wasn't Signet's idea. A lot of editions have been doing this because it makes the reading a lot easier. So the thy refers to the subject of the preceding sentence, which is not affection, but Hermione. So it's Hermione's intention stabs the center. Thou does so everything else. So Hermione's the thing, not affection. So it's not an ode to madness. But Hermione's unknowable intention, whether she is affecting love, orgasm, paternity of children, is the thing that's making him lose his consciousness. And this actually makes more sense, right? This is more Othello-esque, and it seems very uncharacteristic for Leontes to be waxing poetical about an abstraction. That's not really his thing. He only waxes poetical about his personal problems. So the undeterminable possibilities of her intention, which is her desire, is what for Leontes creates the alliance with fantasy, communicatest with dreams, art, and the break with reality, fellowest nothing. So Hermione's intention has knocked out any possibility of empirical knowledge, and lined Leontes up with fantasy, and then he contemplates how that break can so how his psychosis, how his dream reality can affect reality. That's when he says co-join with something, right? So tis very credent thou mayest co-join with something. So after he says that there's no reality, he says then that means that it can co-join with something which is not nothing. And so the not reality actually affects reality. This is deep philosophical stuff, man. Hope I go somewhere with this. It can affect reality in any way, and it's not bound to the authoritative charge or direction to act in a prescribed manner. So that's the beyond commission, right? So once broken from reality, Hermione's mysterious intention affects reality, and it affects in reality that does not need to follow the laws of physics, humanity, God, anything, because it's just totally free-floating and just angry and contingent and chance-ish, right? So this discovery of essential contingency at the heart of things disquieting, it inflicts his brain, hardens his brows, not just the cuckold sense, but also makes his countenance stern, unhappy. Remember I was saying that they actually overglossed cuckold jokes in Shakespeare? And so what's happening is he's got a stable vision of reality, that's undermined by the mystery of Hermione's intention. And it causes him a crisis, right? So, you know, in the sense, now he doesn't know if his colostomy is reversible or not. And it's, right? So this is and we know what's at the heart of comedy? Chance. I was going for chance, but tragedy works too. So, so this contingency is at the heart of comedy. So what Leontes is really having here is a comic crisis. He's not dealing with his being in a comedy very well, as I put here in a briefer, more concise. I'm banning myself from PowerPoints. You guys are witnessing the last Chromebook PowerPoint. He has discovered the essence of comedy and reality. Comedy equals dependence on chance, and it's unbearable. As with Othello, he decides to fight off the encounter with comic contingency by imposing tragic certainty. So what's the only way you can be sure if your wife is a whore? Yeah, you have to watch her getting topped, as Iago puts it. Okay, no more of that nonsense. Okay, so we've got this this mission of stop that comedy or prove my love a whore. That Leontes is so obsessed with. So Leontes doesn't have an Iago to illustrate his fantasy, or does he? I don't know, probably not. So he has to cuckold himself to box the grounds for tragic certainty. So let's look at 173. I'm on page 12. And all right, 174. Starting with Hermione, can I get a Leontes? Actually, you know what? Let's just go one step at a time. No.
How thou lovest us, show in our brothers welcome. Let what is dear in Sicily be cheap, next to thyself and my young rover. He's a parent to my heart.
Okay, so what's he saying here? What does he mean by what is dear in Sicily? Let it be cheap. What's dear in Sicily? What does dear mean? Think economics. The basic law of being a merchant. Buy cheap, sell dear. Yeah, highly valued, expensive. So what's valued highly in Sicily? Let it be cheap.
The president, the King Polixenes?
Yeah. So, but what else? What would be really, really highly valued in Sicily? Yeah. Yeah, Hermione.
Why her?
Because it's the queen. Supposedly.
Oh, right. Polixenes is from Bohemia.
Yeah. So he's okay. There you go. No problem. So what's he suggesting to Hermione do? And then he says, to your own bent. So go to the garden. Let what's dear in Sicily be cheap. Go to the garden and do whatever you want. Nobody's going to bug you. That's what he says, right? To your own bents dispose you, you'll be found, be you beneath the sky. And then aside, I am angling now, though you perceive me not how I give line. Go to. How she holds up the nab to the bill to him, and arms her with the boldness of a wife to her allowing husband. What's the boldness of a wife to her allowing husband?
Putting out.
Yeah, what's an allowing husband? What would an allowing husband be?
What's her finance or wife?
Not just. So with the boldness of a wife to her allowing husband. Okay, since I don't want to dwell on this forever, since we've got a big philosophical thing to discuss that I don't want to overlap into the next one, I'm going to tell you. This is just line for line a completely explicit cuckold fantasy scenario. I am angling now, go off to the garden. I'll perceive you whether I'm there or not. So don't worry, because he controls the world with his mind. Let your dear expensive thing, your chastity, be cheap, and And then aside, he's like, oh, there he goes. Just like just with the boldness of a wife to her allowing husband, and allowing husband is a wife that allows, or a husband that allows his wife fun, right? So allowing husband is a voluntary cuckold, or the schmo in the porn scenario. Got it? So if that's on the final, that's what that's about. All right. So gives her the okay, explains the attention, and then awkwardly tells his son, "Go play, boy, play. Thy mother plays, and I play too. But so disgraced apart, whose issue will hiss me to the grave. Contempt and clamor will be my knell. Go play, boy, play. There have been, or I'm much deceived, cuckolds here now." So he goes into this whole thing. It's awkward to bring his son into this like that, but fortunately, so he's making himself the orchestrator of his own cuckold fantasy. Okay, and then from 189 on, there have been, or I am much deceived, cuckolds here now, and many a man there is, even at this present, now while I speak this, holds his wife by the arm, that little thinks she has been sluiced in the absence. That's great. In his absence. I love the dysphemisms for sex that Leontes has. And his pond fished by his next neighbor. Sorry, Sir. Oh, he's fishing the next man's pond. Sir Smile, his neighbor, nay, there's comfort in it. Huh? So he's picturing his pond getting fished by his neighbor, or that or his wife's getting sluiced. But there's comfort in it. So whilst other men have gates, and those gates opened as mine against their will. So there's the whoa. I think I broke my throat. Interesting. Yeah, I did. This is what happens. It's like when you go get an oil change, Jiffy Lube, and then your starter goes out. All right. Interesting. At least it'll be caught on YouTube when I die. So, so the comfort is that he is aware of the fishing of his pond. So there's comfort in that. So by orchestrating his own cuckold fantasy, he somehow gets comfort, I guess. Because why? Well, because he's imposing tragic certainty on it. And yeah.
So is it the colostomy principle?
Yes.
He knows.
Yes. The colostomy principle explains 95% of human behavior.
Isn't it also because like he assumes that his wife is already cuckolded him, so in this case he's allowing it to happen, so it eases the pain a little bit, so that way it's like, okay, well this is on my terms instead of on her terms.
Yeah. Yeah, that the only caveat to that would be that right now he's sort of talking himself into, right now it's still just a possibility that he will be cuckolded. He hasn't put it all together yet. But other than that, you're completely right. And you may be completely all the way right. Maybe he just hasn't said it. But yeah, it's so he's just gaining control over the of the contingent situation. Yeah.
If he doesn't think he's been cuckolded yet, then why doesn't he think that she's his daughter?
Well, has that come to terms yet? Has that occurred to him yet?
Yeah.
We're still only on page 13. Okay, so should all despair that have revolted wives, the 10th of mankind would hang themselves. And this is actually right on the money. So there's in worldwide cross-cultural surveys, I'm sure I've said this before, but exactly 90% of children are the parents or the children of the guy that they think is their dad and that their dad thinks. So you can look at this two ways. All right, women are 90% faithful, or the glass can also be half full. So that means like so there's 35 of you here. There's no way to tell by looking. So this is the So his desire graph would be desire 1, happiness, desire 2, certainty. His relationship with knowledge is he's making it up as he goes along. The problem is, same as always, conflicting desires, right? And the solution, well, you'll recall that this is exactly Othello's desire chart. So solution would just be sort of like tragedy or whatever, right? So, wow, still page 13. So then he gets his confirmation from Camillo. So he's replaying the thing, except for now he's getting his confirmation by a not woman. So he can take it seriously, even though Camillo is. Let's read just a little bit. Can I get a Leontes and a Camillo? Somebody that hasn't gone. You've already gone.
I haven't done
Let's do these two. All right, start with why that's some comfort. That's 208 or 9.
Why, that's some comfort. What, Camilla there?
Aye, my good lord.
Go play, Mamilius. Thou art an honest man. This, Camilla, this great sir, will you yet stay longer?
You had much ado to make his anchor hold. When you cast out, it will still come home.
Didst notice?
He would not stay at your petitions, made his business more material.
Didst perceive it?
Okay, actually that's good. I just wanted to get the sense of it. Does this recall a famous conversation from Othello at all? And how Iago was prompting?
I like nothing.
Yeah. So in effect, this does the same thing, right? He's you had much ado to make his anchor hold. When you cast out, it still came home. Did notice? He would not stay at your petition, made his business more material. So it's sort of maybe an involuntary Iago, but it's interesting to think that maybe Camillo's orchestrating this whole thing and actually is a Iago-ish figure, because it actually kind of makes sense, because he does manipulate situations to his own advantage with absolutely no, conscious of. I want somebody to do Camillo's a psychopath for their exam question. I think it'll work. And then, we find out he has a woman's longing for Sicily later. So maybe he's got like some sort of like attachment, woman-like attachment to Leontes, and is trying to get rid of the competition. Intriguing. I think somebody should go there. I'm not going to. But the point is, again, as we saw with Hermione and Polly's discussion, that you can interpret Camillo's talk as innocent banter. You can interpret it in the way that Leontes does. And so Leontes interprets it as confirmation that the wife's cheating on him, right? So language is ambiguous, interpretable, unstable, blah, blah, blah. So what about ocular or sensory proof? Let's look at 267 on the next. Not you seen, Camillo, but that's passed out, you have. Or your eyeglasses thicker than a cuckold torn. Or heard, for to a vision so apparent rumor cannot be mute. Or thought, for cogitation resides not in the man that does not think. My wife is slippery. So he's bringing out vision as confirmation. So, but what's the problem with his appeal to vision? Does he actually ask if anybody saw anything? Let's look at the text.
He sends them into the garden by themselves.
What's that?
He sends them into the garden by themselves.
Yeah.
How can they see?
Yeah, so nobody sees. So he calls on, have you not seen, Camillo? But that's passed out, you have. Doesn't even ask if he actually saw anything, because has Camillo seen anything? Has anybody? So he's ostensibly appealing to empirical evidence. My throat is seriously broken. Whoa. But he's not. He just says, did you not see? Oh, but of course you have, or your eyeglasses are too thick. Have you heard? And then, well, rumor would say, so he appeals to rumor for his auditory proof. Is rumor good auditory proof in your guys'? Yeah, I agree it is. And then thought, but his conditions for thought is that that you're not thinking if you don't think that his wife is slippery. So that's good, right? So anyway, the point is that his empirical evidence is not so good. Disagreeing with my conclusion equals you're not thinking. And then we get to the is whispering nothing passage. Is whispering nothing. Is leaning cheek to cheek. Is meeting noses. Yeah. Kissing with inside lip, stopping the career of laughter with a sigh, a note infallible of breaking honesty, horsing foot on foot, skulking in corners, wishing clocks more swift, hours, minutes, noon, midnight, and all eyes blind with the pin in the web, but theirs only. That would unseen be wicked. Is this nothing? Why then the world and all that's in it 'tis nothing. The covering sky is nothing, Bohemia nothing, my wife is nothing, no nothing. Have these nothings, if this be nothing. Boy, he kind of eclipses Cavell there, right? So there's a catalog of all these infallible signs of infatuation. So, right, so he just kind of goes off a checklist. Well, were they nudging noses? Were they playing footsie? Then, but what does he mean by nothing? Yeah, something. So is whispering nothing? Well, it's not is proof, right? Is whispering not proof? Is leaning cheek to cheek? Is meeting noses, kissing with the inside lip not proof of something, right? Proof of what? Who is he talking about? Did he see any of this? No, this is all his fantasy, crap he is imagining. So his speech pretty much amounts to, if my fantasy is not substantial proof, then nothing exists. Right? This is good philosophy. So not only New Age. I like to, we pronounce it like sewage. Manifesting power of visualization, but one step further. Imagination grounds external reality. And as Cavell notes, this is actually very Cartesian. So anyone know what Descartes' cogito ergo sum means?
I think therefore I am.
Yeah, I think therefore I am. So that means that the only certainty without God is that I'm thinking. So my thinking is the grounding of reality. And then he has to bring God from outside the system to prove that he's not being deceived. But Leontes, who does not seem to be any kind of concern with a God to reinforce his certainty. So let me show you this, because this actually either speaks really poorly for contemporary philosophy or really well for New Age people. So this is a quick lesson in Kant. Really, really, really quick lesson in Kant. So we have, what's this? Something. Okay, you can't tell. It's unknowable. The thing in itself, or he calls it the noumena. And then you've got this intraversible gap. And then you've got perception. And so perception kind of works as casting a net, as my philosophy teacher used to say, in the unknowable noumena of what's really out there, and then only getting back what the senses can perceive, right? So this is going and filtered into perception, and perception gets a tree out of it, right? And then for reasons that I'm not going to get into here, there's a circle. But it's just I can't draw the chart without the circle. So this is a representation or representation, but since we're doing pseudo-philosophy, we'll do pseudo-philosophy all the way. And then you get the three Kantian categories for disseminating it. It's reason, which is math, that sort of, like good hard thought, understanding, which is the other stuff, and then aesthetics. I don't want to talk too much about Kant. So anyway, but the point is, that you don't really know what's out there, right? You only know what your senses can perceive, and then you've got these faculties that process it into a coherent reality, right? This seems about right, right? I mean, do you guys think that you really see what's really out there all the time? Anyone want to say, yes, I do? Okay, good. There's nothing worse than naive realists. But, but the problem is, of course, so if we can't see what's really out there, how do we know that it's right? So, how do we know that it's right? How do we know that what we're seeing is a real thing, or close enough to a real thing to be functional?
Reason.
Yeah, but when reason breaks down, and then the understanding breaks down, and then aesthetic judgment breaks down. Well, aesthetic judgment never breaks down because it's just like, oh, it's kooky. But for this to work, actually, because in philosophy, your philosophy breaks down at the exact point that you invoke God. Then you're not doing philosophy anymore, you're doing theology. So the game in philosophy is to put God off as long as possible. So Descartes had to say that he had to bring God into his system to say that he's not getting deceived because God is good and God would not deceive me, right? So, but Kant pushes it off because he's like, well, we can't be dogmatic about it. So what Kant does is he bases the whole, this is called the schema, on a moment. And the moment that he uses is, he's out there, and you guys have heard of the sublime, right? So so he's on a mountain encountering the great vastness of nature, and a huge, powerful storm that's just huge comes rumbling down. And the winds are just tearing, and you really see the power of, like God or whatever, right? And so in sort of the English version of the sublime, that means that you're in awe at the power of God, and you find out that you're really just a little human, and you need to just, bow down. Now, Kant says no. So he's watching this storm from a hurricane bunker. And he's like, what this shows is the power of my imagination, because for me to be able to intuit the amount of power of this going on means that my imagination is actually bigger than reality. And that if I have to decide between empirical reality and my imagination of it, my imagination is more reliable because I can imagine a worse storm than this. So I'm more powerful than it. You like that?
Isn't it variably dissolves?
I don't know why anybody can take Kant seriously, but that's just, anyway. And this is, so this means that, and he eventually decides that this doesn't even really exist. All that really exists is this.
Your perception.
Yeah, because it's unperceivable, so unknowable. Therefore, the thing in itself is actually just a reaction formation of your mind, because you have to attribute a cause to the effect, but it's a fallacious interpretation. So we're kind of screwed, and so naive realism we have to throw out, right? Because for all the reasons that you all know that what you see is not real, right? So we know we're just all sort of quantum clouds, and there's just like different intensities and places, and really it's just all this kind of like subatomic particles bouncing off each other in mostly empty space, right? But so we can't be, this is called naive realism. And plus, we've all hallucinated. We've gone through all of the biases about how I think Hermione was hitting on me and stuff, right? But this is called transcendental philosophy. This is the when Cavell was talking about transcendental. So this is the transcendental schema. So the representation, that means you're a transcendental philosopher if you believe in this. But we've decided if you're comfortable with magical thinking, then transcendentalism's good. But this is the problem that Leontes makes clear in the speech that we just looked at. So this is it's a crisis of grounding the transcendental philosophy, because he's crazy, right? So he's making his imagination, following the Kantian gesture, he's making his imagination bigger than reality, and then watching it. And so this is sort of so this is why philosophers get all excited about Winter's Tale, right? Because Leontes is critiquing Kant, which is fun. So the thing in itself is not directly knowable. We know that. I mean, even the Copenhagen interpretation of quantum physics, This was when Einstein and Heisenberg and Bohr were all meeting together. They decided that what they were studying is not really physics. It's just the quantum physics is really an intense discussion of our measuring devices. But you can't really know what physics is doing. It's too damn weird. And so actually, this is kind of important, that they've only have scientific evidence of reality existing outside of human perception. About 3 years ago was the first test that they did that showed that that there were actually subatomic particles when no one was looking at them. Seriously, 3 years ago. And that's good news, right? But what's really weird is like things like space, time, and number don't exist if nobody's looking at them. So there's no such thing as number. That's just something we impose on the world. But there is something there regardless. That'll be my next course, quantum physics and Shakespeare. But the bigger problem that Leontes brings up is that that this is just as unreliable as that, right? So we don't know the thing in itself, but we don't know the cogito any better either. So this is the problem. This is like what we've been talking about with behavioral economics and Freud and everything, about how we don't know about our drives and our perceptions, and we're always fooling ourselves. So how do you know anything if you can't see what's going on out there and you're batshit insane? Winter's Tale, right? So, okay. So it's not just a matter of letting fantasy go in favor of reality or better judgment or reason. You can't count on any of them. And all of them, fantasy is actually probably the the most reliable, right? So that's weird. But fantasy is actually probably your most reliable indication. Do you agree with this? Do you think that you can? Yeah, neither do I. But but anyway, but according to this, if you can't know the thing in itself, so the thing in itself in Winter's Tale, what's the thing in itself? The unknowable thing in itself.
Hermione.
Yeah, Hermione's intention, right? So and you just can't know, so you can fantasize about it, and that's what's going to be your, for all intents and purposes, the reality of it. But so then we get the colostomy principle again. It's a big time, because any general unknowability makes the world and all that's in it contingent, as Leontes puts it, contingent and unpredictable, and you can't count on anything just from that one spot of Leontes or Hermione's unknowable desire. The whole world falls apart, as Leontes goes back to again and again and again. So the lure of tragic certainty, determinism, homeostasis, death. As we have seen, this is why tragic heroes produce tragedies and force those colostomies beyond the possibility of reversal. But, okay, we'll end on a joke before we go to the... because this is really funny. We've already gone through it, but I can't go. So Leontes is giving this spiel essentially to Camillo, who's looking at me, looking at Leontes the same way that you guys are looking at me. And Leontes says, "Make that thy question and go rot. Doest think I am so muddy, so unsettled, to appoint myself in this vexation? Solely the purity and whiteness of my sheets, which to preserve is sleep, which being spotted is goads, thorns, nettles, tails of wasps, gives scandal to the blood of the prince, my son, who I do think is mine, and love is mine, without right moving to it. Would I do this? Could man be so blench?" So what is he saying? Do you think I would do all this to myself and ruin my reputation and ruin the reputation of my wife? Do you think anybody could possibly be this stupid? And what does Camillo say? Yeah. That's funny, because he's crazy, just like you guys think about me. Okay, so we will, and I know you'll be chomping at the bit to get here Wednesday to find out the exciting conclusion of how do we know reality according to Shakespeare. But I think I've got some quizzes to get back to you. In fact, I don't just think it, I know it. I'm certain. In fantasy and the thing in itself. Or the quiz in her issue, her child. That's why she preserved herself. That was the easy question, too.
It was focused on such detail.
So the answer was she wanted to see your kid.
Yeah, she wanted to see her kid. That's why she preserved herself. How did she know? You ever get the sense that maybe Paulina engineered this whole thing? Possibly Camilla?
She's like, yeah, I'll give it something.
Yeah. Well, because Paulina, so when she got rid of her husband, she was able to torture the king for 16 years. That'd be fun. I would take that job. Just imagine, like, it's like your job is like whoever's president, you just torture them. It'd be great. Yeah.
Number 13, what is the matter for story and what is the matter for drama?
Okay, that's a good one. Anyone have an answer for that?
So the matter for drama was that you had a wife that you thought was lost, but really wasn't. And the matter of story was the story of a daughter who was found lost. Lost and found, sorry.
Yeah. Let me see if there's anything else I need out of that.
I thought they would have to be empirically lost, whatever that means.
Okay, yeah, so I think that's kind of, he says, this is confined as a matter of this drama's competition with narrative romance. By making the finding of a child who has been empirically lost, in fact is italicized, rejected and abandoned, a matter swiftly dealt with by simple narration. So we're dealing with an empirically lost and in fact rejected and abandoned matter is for narration. There's a sense of revenge upon life because you're mad at life or something. And jealousy is derivative of that general just F the world attitude. Okay, I get it. All right, upon its issuing, what's the it's? The jealousy? Yeah. Okay, or separating, or replication.
What does that solve?
You see what you put us through?
It's fun.
For you.
What was the question again? Well, the question just asks what chain of equations does it solve? And the chain of equations is just the one that, as you pointed out, right? Yeah, it's just, it's a simple thing. It's the chain of equations in which sons and brothers are lovers and lovers are fathers and sons and wives and mothers become one another. Ooh, that's very musical. So that would be the answer.
So sons and brothers are lovers and fathers and sons are what?
Sons and brothers are lovers. That's hot. Lovers are fathers and sons. So, hold on. Oh no. I'll have no markers. Are there some back there? Oh, curse it, curse it, curse it. All right. Let's go have ice cream instead. Okay, actually, you know what? I think I've got one in the bag.
No.
Well, that goes without saying. Like I would come to class without ice cream. I'm no fool. I'm not a doctor.
Everything and nothing at the same time. I don't know.
That sounds deep. I like that. I'm going with that. Because like we want like everything. Because everything. That's another thing, right? Everything is so nothing is actually everything, because it's plenitude. Because I don't know. Let's answer your question. Yeah.
Question.
Mhm.
22. What chain of equations does taking jealousy as derivative of the sense of revenge solve?
Yeah, that one.
That's awesome. What chain of equations does taking jealousy as derivative of the sense of revenge upon life solve?
One where fathers and sons are lovers and wives and mothers are interchangeable. Something like that.
Yeah. So I've got the taking the jealousy as derivative of the sense of revenge upon life, upon its issuing. So issuing is primarily in this sense. Issuing is what?
Siring.
Yeah, birthing. Yeah. Or separating. And then separating is important because nothing is actually everything, but not separated, right? Plenitude. Right? Okay. And or replication. I am taking it as, so to speak, that so to speak there is important, the solution of a problem in computation or economy, one that at a stroke solves the chain of equations in which sons and brothers are lovers, and lovers are fathers and sons, and wives and mothers become one another.
So what's the short answer?
Okay, all right. So we've got so jealousy is derivative of the sense of revenge upon life. All right, so there's. Okay, let's the Cavell reading's kind of hard. You guys notice that? Yeah, I mean that's like real philosophy. Sorry about that. But well, well, we read him. What did we read him on? Othello. That wasn't that hard. This was harder, huh? Well, fortunately, you all have your Cartesian meditations, and I'm sure you've all read Kant's Critique of Pure Reason in the last 6 months, because, I mean, of course, right? Yeah, I mean, I can just tell. You just have an air of Kantianness about you. Exactly. So do we have any questions? I'm worried about this quiz. I'm going to be honest with you. Yeah.
Does whispering count? Number 16. That's what I thought. No.
I don't know. I wrote that honestly because I didn't know the answer. Did you have it?
It basically just said like no one can know. There's like no way to tell. Does that mean it's like subjected to different people or like?
Yeah. What does it mean?
In the context of what he was talking about with regards to the story, it seemed like Leontes took it to mean something so meaningful that yes, it would have to count because of the way he reacted to it.
Yeah.
But he didn't really say.
Hopefully we'll look at that passage because that's another one of those bizarre Leontian passages. Yeah.
Number 10. Why do we always tell less and more than we know?
Yeah. Again, I was trying to. I wanted to read it, but I didn't want to read it that closely. So I just wrote the question down. I was hoping that somebody would answer it. Yeah.
I thought it was because we have a wish for every.
I have one if you need one.
All right. Got it. All right. So we've got sons, brothers equals lovers. I don't think equation is the right word for this. Lovers are father's sons. And then and, so that would be plus, right? Wives, mothers. So that would be the equation. So if it's on the quiz, that's the answer I'm looking for. Yeah. This actually isn't as complicated as it looks.
Why does Hermione say she preserved herself?
Where is that?
19.
Why does Hermione say she preserved herself? All right. For what reason? She speaks. Is her first words to Leontes saying, "I saved my chaste flower for you"? Yeah, it's Perdita. And the reason she gives for preserving herself, this is actually dwelt on in some detail. Anyone? Ooh. She wanted to see